Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere you'll want to dress like because pants aren't just frowned upon. They're officially illegal. The air is heavy with the scent of pine and incense as you step softly down a narrow path lined with paper lanterns. They sway slightly in the breeze, casting flickers of gold across the crushed stone beneath your feet. Your sandals crunch with each careful step. Overhead, the sky is velvet black, stitched with stars. And ahead there's Nara, the old capital of Japan in the 700s, glowing faintly with candlelight, like a half-remembered dream. Now, I should probably warn you, you probably wouldn't survive this. I mean, no offense, but you coming from the modern world of elastic waistbands and machine-washable joggers. You wouldn't last a single bureaucratic tea ceremony without offending 12 nobles, breaking some kind of hairpin etiquette, or being arrested for an illegal hemline. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, comment your location and local time. I always love seeing where in the world we're all dozing off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The road you're walking is old, older than the stones that make it up. It winds through dense woods that breathe quietly in the dark. Somewhere off to the right, a deer steps softly between the trees, its hooves muffled by moss. It pauses to look at you, judging your trousers, probably, and then melts into the shadows. In the distance, a bell rings, low and steady, the kind of sound that doesn't demand attention, just reminds you that time is still passing. You approach the first Tory gate, a great wooden arch standing calmly between this world and the next. Beyond it, the city opens like a scroll. Lanterns hang from eaves, paper screens slide gently shut, and standing above it all, silhouetted against the moon, is the palace of Emperor Shmuel. You pass under the gate and feel the air shift. It always does that here, like this space is watching you, asking you politely to behave. But don't worry, you're just visiting. The streets of Nara are surprisingly quiet. This is a city that whispers instead of shouting. Even the dogs seem to bark with a certain formal restraint. You pass courtiers in layered silk robes, their hair oiled and shimmering in the lamplight, moving with that slow-motion elegance only people born into luxury can manage. They don't wear pants. Of course they don't. You don't yet know that pants are banned. You haven't gotten the memo, but you will, for now. You pause to admire a little stone basin where water trickles from a bamboo pipe. The scent of cypress and wet earth lingers. It's all very peaceful, very polite, very breezy. You round a corner and come face to face with a row of carved wooden deer masks hanging from a shop stall. The vendor bows. You bow. Neither of you knows why. You're just about to move on when a stern-looking man in dark robes clears his throat behind you. He carries a narrow scroll tucked into his sleeve and gives you a once-over. His gaze lingers uncomfortably on your pant legs. He raises one brow, and just like that, you're inside a new reality. One where garments are laws, hems are political, and your pants, yes, your pants are a crime. Let's rewind a little. It's the year 724, and Emperor Shmu has just taken the throne. He's young, idealistic, and deeply invested in the image of Japan, not just its borders, but its manners, its rituals, and yes, its wardrobe. Robes are more than clothes here. They're declarations, silk layered over silk, folds that speak. Without words, the swish of fabric in a hallway tells you who's walking long before you see their face. And pants? Pants are uncouth, foreign, barbarian, even. The Chinese wear them, the Koreans wear them, the horse people on the steps definitely wear them. But Shmu, he wants Japan to be elegant, dignified, self-contained. He wants sleeves that sweep the floor and robes that glide like clouds. So, naturally, the man bans pants. Technically. It's more complicated than that. The court begins issuing official clothing edict-style guides for nobility, wardrobe mandates for state functions. Pants get edged out, replaced by elaborate skirts and robes. For court officials, for ceremonies, even for battle, though that gets a little awkward. Trousers are relegated to the margins, worn only by peasants, monks, or people who don't mind being looked at like they just tracked mud into a tea ceremony. And you? You are now extremely overdressed in all the wrong ways. You duck into a small tea house to escape the stairs. The paper door slides shut behind you, and the warm scent of roasted barley tea fills your nose. Inside, two men are arguing quietly over the finer points of sleeve etiquette. A third is demonstrating how to walk down a staircase without revealing one's ankles. It's a high-level sport. Apparently, you sit. The floor is tatami, soft under your knees. The host pours you a cup of tea and offers a tray of pickled plums. No one mentions your pants, but you feel the tension like you just wore gym shorts to an opera. Outside, the city hums gently. Somewhere, a temple drum beats once, and a bell answers. You sip your tea and wonder, how did something so simple, pants, for heaven's sake, become a national identity crisis? Historians still debate it. Some argue it was all about class. Robes made you look like you had time, leisure, power. Others say it was about resisting foreign influence, a way of saying, we'll take your Buddhism, thanks, but we'll wear it in our own style. Or maybe it was just fashion. Maybe it was the emperor trying to look cool. Because, truthfully, Shmu was kind of into style. He had a thing for grand robes, rare perfumes, and ceremonial everything. The man once commissioned a massive bronze Buddha statue that required melting down an entire year's supply of domestic copper. If that's not an extra kind of fashion energy, I don't know what is. Eventually, you step back out into the night. The city is quieter now. The palace glows in the distance like a floating lantern. You walk slowly, listening to your own footsteps. The breeze is cooler. You feel it brushing around your ankles. And suddenly, you understand. This whole place was built for robes. The way the wind carries them, the way silk catches the moonlight, the way a long sleeve can be both a greeting and a warning. Pants? Pants just don't have that kind of poetry still. Part of you wants to test the boundaries. You turn a corner, heart thudding slightly, and begin plotting your next move. The next morning begins with the rustle of fabric, not the industrial churning of a dryer or the harsh zap of static cling. No, here, cloth wakes with ceremony, somewhere just beyond your shuttered window. Dozens of silken sleeves are being shaken into shape. Thin fingers are sliding through layers of linen. Waist ties are being cinched with a sort of soft martial precision. And all of it every loop. Every knot is happening without a single pair of pants in sight. You rise slowly, the tatami mat cool beneath your hands, and peer through the slats into the courtyard. There's a servant folding robes over her forearms like waves. She walks in calm loops, her feet never fully leaving the floor, like the ground has personally requested not to be stomped on today. You're not even fully awake yet, and already you're underdressed. Overdressed in the wrong way. The truth is, you don't know where your next robe is coming from. Your own clothes still folded in a corner feel more scandalous now than they did the night before. Not because they're offensive, exactly, but because they scream not from around here. You might as well be wearing a blinking sign that says, talks too loud and doesn't understand incense. Fortunately, someone's been watching over you. You slide open the door and nearly bump into an elderly court attendant. She's so bundled in cream and grey robes. She looks like a pile of perfectly folded clouds. Without a word, she offers you a fresh garment, something soft and sea-colored with very long sleeves. You hold it up, unsure what goes where. She squints at your confusion and finally says, you wear it like the wind wears mist. And then she walks away. Right. Robes. On, you step out into the bright Nara morning. The imperial compound is bigger than you thought. You'd pictured it all as one palace, but it's really a woven tapestry of buildings. Long, low halls that stretch like brushstrokes across gravel courtyards. Paper lanterns dangle from wooden beams. Screens slide open and closed with whispers. You follow a group of courtiers toward a garden pavilion. They don't speak to you, but their movements are slow and deliberate, like they're all practicing to become wind chimes. At the edge of the courtyard, a bell rings, and just like that, the emperor appears. No trumpets, no firework fanfare, just a man in impossibly rich robes, standing like he was born in that exact spot. Emperor Shmuel. Early 30s, slim, with a gaze like he's memorizing the future. He says nothing at first, just steps out into the sun and lets his outer robe catch the breeze. It's the color of crushed saffron, and when it moves, it almost hums. You've heard of leaders who project power with their voice, their presence, their armies. Shmu projects power with fabric. He takes his seat beneath a painted canopy, while scribes, ministers, and family members arrange themselves like living brushstrokes. Everyone's in robes. Everyone's sleeves are extremely well behaved. And that's when the proclamation begins. The court minister stands and, with the drama of a man who's read many scrolls, begins listing official regulations for court dress. He recites measurements for sleeve width, acceptable fabric for spring ceremonies, seasonal robe colors, matching hair ornaments. You half expect him to start regulating eyebrow angles. Then it comes, and from this day forward, no man woman, or child of courtly rank shall wear bifurcated garments, or garments resembling those of the northern horse peoples. A few murmurs ripple through the assembly. You catch the phrase again. Bifurcated garments. That's polite speak for pants are illegal now. You look around. No one seems surprised. In fact, several courtiers nod approvingly, as if finally someone's doing something about all those rogue pant legs. Only a single young scribe looks alarmed. He scribbles so furiously his inkstone wobbles. Perhaps he's wearing forbidden trousers under his robes. You make a mental note to follow up on that later. The logic, if you squint, makes a kind of courtly sense. Pants are functional. Pants are for running, climbing, jumping off horses. Pants do things. Robes, on the other hand, exist. They flow, they signify, they suggest that your time is so valuable, so rich with poetry and reflection, that you couldn't possibly be expected to do something as undignified as run. Robes, in this world, are aristocracy made visible. And so, the law isn't just about fashion. It's about values. If you wear robes, you belong to this delicate, incense-scented machine of culture. If you wear pants, you're signaling something dangerous. Practicality. Emperor Shmoo isn't banning trousers because he hates comfort, though. Let's be honest, he probably does. He's banning them because they're too useful. They belong to peasants, to warriors, to nomads. People who might gasp at without first writing a formal letter about it. After this ceremony, the courtiers disperse in small clusters of rustling silk. They talk softly, trading compliments and minor gossip. You trail after them, gliding as best you can in your borrowed robes. One noblewoman catches your eye and smiles politely, but it's the kind of smile that says, "You're new here, aren't you?" Back in the corridor, you pass a scroll on the wall depicting legendary court officials from the past. None of them have legs. Not because the artist couldn't draw them, but because robes were more important than anatomy. The hem is the message. Further along, a poem is painted delicately onto a screen. A single sleeve brushed against the plum tree petals fell like quiet thoughts. You stand before it for a moment, unsure whether it's profound or just very expensive. Nonsense. Either way, it beats modern motivational posters. Now that pants are officially illegal for the court, you start noticing just how committed people are to the aesthetic. There are robe fluffers, sleeve handlers, belt adjusters, a small boy whose job seems to be carrying extra folds for his lord when walking uphill. And yet, not everyone is pleased. Historians still wonder if there was any real resistance to the decree. The records are polite, perhaps, to polite. But whispers survived. A court musician who tripped over his own sleeves and fell into a koi pond. A low-ranking official caught stuffing trousers into a storage chest, claiming they were for emergencies. One surviving letter, unsigned, grumbles that if the emperor truly wishes for spiritual purity, perhaps he should start with the tax code and not the undergarments. Somewhere in the imperial archives, there's probably a list of confiscated trousers, each tagged with the owner's name and a quiet note of shame. You return to your quarters just before dusk. The city outside glows gently again, paper lanterns flickering into life. Cicadas sing. The air smells of sandalwood and fresh rice. You sit cross-legged in your borrowed robe and feel the weight of the day settle into your shoulders. You've witnessed something rare, a world that runs on grace, gestures, and the elegant, enforcement of a very unusual law. And while you still miss the practical comfort of your own clothes, part of you is starting to understand why someone might choose silk over seams, especially when the wind picks up Dot as it does now, curling softly through the corridor and lifting your sleeves like wings. You wake before sunrise, stirred by the shuffling sound of slippers on wood and the distant, musical clack of bamboo fountains resetting themselves with a hollow knock. A pale light seeps through the paper shutters. Somewhere, a rooster tries to crow with dignity but gives up halfway. You roll over and remember, with a slow, groggy dread, you're still not allowed to wear pants. The robe from yesterday lies neatly folded at your side. You slide into it, slightly more skilled now, though there's still that moment of confusion when you end up with the collar pointing the wrong way and one sleeve somehow draped over your head. Like a sad silk jellyfish, outside, the courtyard is misty and pale. Cherry trees arch over stone pots, and a gardener in saffron robes sweeps fallen petals with a straw broom so gently. It seems he's more arranging them than removing them. He nods to you as you pass. His sleeves are rolled just slightly at the wrist, probably a rebel. You wander toward the eastern garden, curious about what people actually did before elastic, zippers, and athleisure. How did they function? How did they breathe? How did they sit down without causing a small architectural collapse? And then you find it, the Rogue Pavilion. It's not officially called that, of course, but that's what it is. A long wooden hall lined with panels of colored silk, fashion diagrams, miniature court dolls in perfect outfits, and an entire wall showcasing sleeve sizes through the decades. There's a quiet clerk inside with round spectacles and a brush pen behind one. Here, he looks like he hasn't blinked since spring. He doesn't say anything, just nods once and gestures you toward the exhibits. This is where it all begins to make sense. A display shows the evolution of the sakutai, the formal court robe of elite males, which started as humble layered tunics and evolved into something resembling a ceremonial tent with attitude. The back train alone is the length of a futon. It's not designed to walk in. It's designed to exist while other people do things around you. Nearby, another robe hangs, like a suspended wave, embroidered with cranes and pine trees. The sleeves are so long they nearly sweep the floor. A nearby note reads, "The longer the sleeve, the more refined the soul. Short sleeves are for servants. Pants are for goats. Rude, but fair." You start to understand that in this world, movement is suspect. Fast motion implies need, and need implies poverty. The goal here isn't efficiency, it's aesthetic serenity. If you appear to glide rather than walk, then you're winning. Robes help with that. They float. They whisper. They ripple like thoughts you haven't quite spoken yet. They also ventilate. In a city where summers melt the bones of bricks, a wide, flowing robe is a godsend. Trousers, little sweltering prisons for your knees. You begin to appreciate why people here chose grace over grip, fluidity over function. A fan clicks open beside you. An elderly woman in imperial grey raises her eyebrows as if she's just read. Your thoughts. Robes breathe, she says. Pants suffocate the thighs. That's no way to reach enlightenment. You nod, because obviously, the exhibit continues. You learn that robes aren't just fashion, they're language. Layers speak of seasons. Patterns mark social rank. A well-timed sleeve flick can mean anything from thank you for the tea to please leave before I exile you emotionally. Even how you tie your sash matters. Loose and low. Probably an artist. High and tight. Bureaucrat. 7 loops with a pine branch knot. Monk. Possibly showing off. You try a demonstration robe on with the help of a training mannequin. It takes 20 minutes. 3 assistants and a nervous bird who wandered in by mistake. When it's all done, you look like a beautifully wrapped dumpling with no motor function dot. And that's the point. You finally sit on a small bench, arms folded politely in your lap. You can't move much, but you feel weightless, swaddled in history, dignified. Like your to-do list includes a poetry duel, not a grocery run. As you leave the robe pavilion, the wind picks up. It glides through the sleeves of a court musician passing by, sending little ripples across the fabric. He doesn't flinch, just leans into it, letting the air sculpt his silhouette like a living scroll painting. You watch in silence, the rustling robes all around you starting to sound like water dot in that moment. It hits you. This entire city is designed for robes. The wide corridors, the sliding screens, the breeze-channeled walkways. Everything encourages softness, drapery, grace. Pants, by contrast, are loud. They fold with friction. They clutch the body. They tell the world, I need to do something. But in Nara, the highest goal isn't doing, it's being. Preferably while seated near a carp pond with a cup of barley tea and absolutely no leg seams. Of course, not everyone is thrilled about this. Historical texts tell us about minor uprisings. In outlying provinces, where local lords continued wearing pants defiantly. One particularly dramatic incident involved a noble from the north showing up at court, in full riding trousers, refusing to apologize, and being demoted to garden path reassignments, a position that mostly involved watching moss grow. And even within the capital, there were whispers. Was the ban really necessary? Was it truly noble to trip over your sleeves on staircases? Could dignity coexist with mobility? Historians still wonder if the anti-pants movement was a case of cultural pride gone too far or a calculated act of imperial branding. After all, nothing makes a ruler more memorable than reshaping how his people move through the world. Back in your borrowed quarters, you sit cross-legged, still robed, watching the dusk roll in. Your fingers play absently with the long tie. At your waist, it's strangely calming. Like the universe is just one big piece of silk waiting to be folded. You wonder what kind of robe emperor Shmoo wore in private. Surely not the full sakutai all the time. Maybe something simpler. Maybe even Scandalous thought a hidden pair of pajama trousers under his outer robe? We'll never know. The records are respectfully vague. What we do know is that, for a few, Strange and lovely years. The empire glided on the hem of its own imagination, and pants mundane, clingy, practical pants simply had no place in it. You lie back slowly, your sleeves forming gentle crescents on either side. The ceiling above is painted with clouds. Somewhere outside, a nightingale sings exactly 3 notes, then stops, as if reconsidering its choices. The breeze returns, and you don't miss your pants at all. The sun rises through layers of mist and plum blossom, and today, the capital feels unsettled. You sense it in the way the wind skips across the tiled rooftops, in the way the sleeves of noblemen are stiffer than usual. Even the deer seem edgy. One of them gives you a look as if to say, something's brewing, and for once, it's not fermented rice. You wander toward the palace, curious, half suspecting another robe regulation is about to be announced. But what you find instead is something far stranger. A fashion crisis. Or more accurately, a national identity meltdown. You arrive at a long pavilion just as a group of ministers file in, their robes dragging like weary banners. There's an official, scroll held aloft. A tea ceremony tray is already trembling with nervous little clinks. One nobleman coughs awkwardly into his fan. At the center of the rooms, it's a new set of proposals. Bold ones, radical, even. A call to copy Tang China's court dress, down to the silks, the tassels, and gasp the legwear. Suddenly, it's not about robes versus pants anymore. It's about Japan itself. Should it follow the mighty Chinese dynasty in all things, including fashion, or stand its own quiet, breezy ground? You take a seat in the back, blending in as best you can, your sleeves still slightly too long, still prone to trailing through ink pots. A young official stands and begins to read from a scroll written in the clean, sharp strokes of Chinese kanji. He's arguing for harmony with the continent, cultural unity, formal adoption of Tang courtwear. You can practically hear Emperor Shomu's cheek twitching. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about style. It's about status. China is the cultural heavyweight. Their poets, painters, and philosophers are revered. Their cities are massive. Their court customs intimidatingly complex. And Japan, still defining itself, has been borrowing heavily writing systems, religion, architecture. But robes are personal. You watch Shmu carefully. He doesn't speak yet, just stares down at the scroll, his expression somewhere between serene and deeply offended. Finally, a second minister rises. He's older, with a beard like soft moss and the tired posture of someone who's been surviving politics for decades. He says only this: if we dress like them, we bow before them. The room stills. Even the tea tray stops clinking. Outside, the debate spreads like wildfire. You hear it in passing conversations between silk merchants at the market, monks under temple eaves, servants refilling lanterns. One argues that Tang robes are more structured. Another insists Japanese clothing is better suited for meditation, poetry, and walking slowly without tripping over geese. It's a national conversation about hems, and it runs deeper than cloth. What does it mean to be Japanese in the 8th century, when so much of your culture is arriving by boat from the mainland? When your nobles study Chinese calligraphy, your monks chant Chinese sutras, And your emperors dream of bronze Buddhas that could rival any Tang statue? To keep the robes or not is to choose between imitation and identity. You find yourself at a small shrine later, watching a group of acolytes sweep the steps. Their robes are simple, brown and beige, homemade. Their motions are slow, and the rhythm of the broom sounds like thought. One of them glances at you and murmurs, "China taught us writing, but it didn't teach us walking." You nod, because, of course, in a quieter part of the palace, there's a chamber used only for reflection. No meetings, no proclamations, just silk mats, an incense burner, and a calligraphy screen painted with a single character: Kokoro, heart, mind, spirit. You sit there a while. The walls are so silent. They seem to inhale with you. And suddenly, you remember something strange. Japan once did wear pants. Well, not quite like yours. But back in the Yamato-e period, centuries before Nara, people wore short trousers called hakama when farming, riding, or preparing for battle. Functional, split-legged, dusty. But when Buddhism arrived along with Chinese cultural imports, robes began to rise. Pants became commoner wear. By the time of Shmuel, they were almost taboo. Yet even now, certain military clans still wear them quietly, as if history didn't get the memo. Historians still debate whether Emperor Shomu's no pants decree was a genuine embrace of native style or a political move meant to distance himself from the militarized provinces and their increasingly restless warriors. After all, when you make pants illegal, it's a clever way to make rebellion illegal too. Back at court, the emperor makes his decision. Not loudly, not angrily, just formally, a new decree is issued. While diplomatic envoys may don Chinese-style garb when abroad, all domestic ceremonies shall maintain native robes. No pants, no external mimicry. The message is clear. We may learn from others, but we dress as ourselves. The ministers bow deeply. One of them lets out the tiniest exhale of relief, audible only to the gods and the nearest deer. That night, the court dresses for an evening of poetry. The robes shimmer in candlelight, deep emerald, snowy, white, storm gray. You sit cross-legged near a folding screen and sip plum wine. The floor creaks gently with every breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a bamboo flute begins to play softly, like it's trying not to disturb the stars. A woman recites, "I saw Tang robes once, tight, stiff." Needing translation, our sleeves speak softly. Laughter, polite and musical, rises from the audience. No one mentions pants, but a sly young poet slips a line into his verse. "If our legs must be parted, let it be in dance." Scandalous later, as you walk the dark garden paths alone, you realize something odd. You no longer miss your pants. In fact, you almost pity them. Pants are impatient. Robes wait with you. Pants assume action. Robes suggest thought. You turn a corner, and the full moon appears, round and low, haloed by the scent of incense and pine. The wind pulls gently at your sleeves as if to say, "This is how we move here." And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to get it. The sun hangs like a drop of honey over the tiled rooftops of Nara, thickening the air and making everything feel just slightly too warm, like a silk blanket left too long in the sun. You're already sweating. Everyone is, but no one will admit it because the robes must stay on. Today's journey is not about politics, not about identity, diplomacy, or the artful illegality of pants. Today is about silk, layers, texture, and the quiet social code stitched into every hem. You find yourself in the company of a noble seamstress Lady Hoshi who has generously agreed to show you around her workspace, which smells like camphor wood and sweetened rice paste. Her fingers are stained slightly purple from dye. Her sleeves are pushed back just a little farther than propriety would normally allow. That, she says, is how you know she gets things done. This, she tells you, unrolling a bolt of sea green fabric, is the whisper of status. You blink. I thought that was the voice of money. She grins. That too. Robes, you discover, are not just clothing here. They are ranking systems, social hierarchies, political opinions you wear on your body. It begins with color. You trail behind Lady Hoshi as she pulls open drawers and cabinets, each more elegant than the last. She holds up a length of silk dyed a soft, foggy lavender. Only the highest ladies can wear this shade, she says, then sets it down and produces a shade so close to it, you'd swear it's identical. This one, she adds, will get you exiled. Turns out lavender's forbidden to the middle class. Just like vermilion, just like sky-bright turquoise. The wrong color at the wrong festival. Social suicide. Then there's pattern. Chrysanthemums mean longevity. Cranes suggest grace. Peonies whisper seduction. Lotus petals are spiritual. A robe with no pattern at all? That's a bold move used mostly by monks and people so wealthy they can afford to look humble. And don't even get Lady Hoshi started on sleeve length. She lives a robe designed for court appearances. The sleeves could shelter a family of cats. Then she shows you a servant's robe, neat, crisp, just barely enough fabric to perform a respectful bow. It's not about fashion, she insists. It's about volume. The more fabric you wear, the more people must wait for you. Makes sense. You think of Emperor Shmuel, whose train was long enough to touch the threshold before he did. A man whose entrance was an event in and of itself. You now realize status in Nara isn't just shown through gold or jewels. It's shown through the deliberate, glorious inconvenience of what you wear. You take a break with Lady Hoshi under a painted parasol. She serves you chilled barley tea and a small bowl of pickled plum. The sun filters through the parasol's rice paper canopy, casting the shadows of painted cranes across your lap. She tells you how silk is imported from Kyushu and dyed in great vats using flowers, minerals, and fermented indigo. The process takes days. The drying takes longer. The folding, an entire art form of its own. There are only 3 folds, she says, tapping her cup, that are acceptable for funeral wear. Fold incorrectly, and the dead will haunt your wardrobe. You don't ask whether she's joking. You're too afraid she isn't. In the afternoon, you're invited to an indoor robe inspection, a gentle form of humiliation masked as tradition. Courtiers line up before a panel of older women, who inspect everything from fabric quality to thread density to sleeve symmetry. One young man is quietly scolded for layering spring patterns over a summer sash. Your robe is confused, the judge says. It thinks it's August. He looks crushed. Another woman is dismissed for faded embroidery. Not torn, just slightly muted. Regret. They whisper, clings to weak dye. You try to look invisible. You succeed by folding your hands exactly at navel height and staring slightly downward like you've been doing it your whole life. It works. You're passed over with nothing more than a nod. As evening cools the rooftops, you stroll through the market district, where robe culture shows its more casual side. Artisans wear rough cotton tied with cords. Children run barefoot in tiny yukata robes patterned with frogs and clouds. A merchant pushes a cart stacked with kimono sashes of all colors, calling out, "Buy one." We're 7. Annoy a monk. You pause at a stall where a mirror leans against a stack of folded cloth. For the first time in days, you see yourself properly. Your borrowed robe is a little wrinkled, the sleeves not quite symmetrical, but there's something about the way it moves with you. How it catches the light, how it belongs in this world that makes you smile. You are slowly becoming one of them. Well, not fully. Your socks are still modern, but spiritually, you're 70% noble court aesthetic now. Back in the palace garden, you spot a lone official sitting beneath a tree, fussing endlessly with the folds of his outer robe. You offer him a polite nod. He looks up, sighs dramatically, and says, "If only our thoughts could be pleated as neatly as our robes." Then goes back to folding. That's the mood around here, elegant existentialism. Every sleeve a metaphor, every knot a small crisis. Historians still wonder whether this obsessive layering was practical or performative. Some argue that it was a deeply encoded social language, a wearable script. Others think it was just a very fancy way of creating laundry. Regardless, the system lasted for centuries. Generations would be born and die with their status quite literally draped across their shoulders. And you're just passing through. But you're beginning to understand how robes can be more than just garments. They're declarations, shields, invitations. Even on occasion, tiny acts of rebellion. You return to your quarters, where a servant has laid out a robe for the next day. This one's the color of pale ash with wave patterns at the hem. Subtle, respectable, modest, but not invisible. You fold today's robe carefully, trying to remember the pleat sequence Lady Hoshi taught. As you do, you feel a kind of peace, a small ritual, a tiny act of belonging. The city quiets around you. Lanterns flicker behind sliding doors. A dog barks once, then seems to reconsider. You stretch out on the tatami floor, sleeves fanned like wings, and breathe slowly. For now, at least, you fit here. Not in language, not in blood, but in fabric. And somehow, that's enough. You wake in the middle of the night with a single, absurd thought running through your head. What if I just wore the pants? Not in theory, not as a joke, not folded into a scroll to be studied like a forbidden relic. No, you mean it literally. You want to wear a pair of trousers in the city of robes. Just once. Just to feel the treasonous joy of it. The idea is reckless, silly, possibly criminal. It is also. Suddenly, all you can think about. You sit up, the moonlight draping the room in silver. Somewhere outside, a deer coughs, which somehow makes the night feel more secretive. Your robe slips from your shoulder, and in the darkness, you stare across the room at the bundle you weren't supposed to keep your own clothes, your own trousers. Cotton, fitted, unapologetically bifurcated. You slide across the floor, soundless. You hesitate only once before unwrapping the bundle like it's a sacred offering or a cursed object from a forgotten shrine. The fabric feels familiar, strange. After days of silk and linen and folding your sleeves like ceremonial paper cranes. You pull the pants on. You stand. They fit. You are now a wanted fashion criminal. You sneak out like a ghost robe still draped over your shoulders. As a cover, pants rustling underneath with every step. The hallways are empty, save for the occasional crackle of a candle or the twitch of an ornamental fish in a courtyard pond. Your heart pounds. Every floorboard feels louder. Every shadow might be a government official trained in textile-related apprehension. And yet, you've never walked so freely. No folding sleeves, no flared hems, no fabric whispering your secrets to the garden breeze. Just steps, clean, grounded, efficient. You head toward the temple gate. Something about sacred spaces makes rule breaking feel either holier or more foolish. Maybe both. A sudden breeze swirls past. You freeze. It feels cold. Right. Pants are not, it turns out, designed for narrow spiritual air currents. Your calves tingle. Your thighs whisper a soft why. You tug your robe tighter over your shoulders and press forward. The temple's outer wall looms ahead. Carved wooden beams, roof tiles curved like dragon spines. And beyond that, a courtyard filled with small stone statues wearing red bibs and knit hats, guardians of children and travelers. You step inside. The gravel crunches underfoot like paper being torn slowly. The moon casts long shadows across the statue faces. Some are smiling, others look deeply unimpressed. You bow, part respect, part guilt. Then, from behind one of the columns, you hear it, a cough, followed by the sound of a brush scraping across. Stone. You inch closer and find an old monk seated beside a lantern, repainting the face of one of the statues. His brush moves with soft certainty, even in the dark. He glances up, sees you, and freezes. His eyes travel slowly down. They land on your pant legs. The world holds its breath. Then, without saying a word, he picks up a second brush and hands it to you. For the next hour, you sit in your pants beside a monk who has, quite clearly, seen worse. He paints the cheeks of the guardian with a faint blush of vermilion. You follow suit, unsure if you're honoring the statue or just distracting the universe from your hemline heresy. Eventually, he speaks. You wear the old way. You pause. Is it wrong? He shrugs. Wrong is a robe with too many seasons in it. He adds another line of detail. Then, almost as an afterthought, I wore pants once, riding north. You can't herd oxen in a train of silk. You nearly drop the brush. You wore pants? He nods. I also ate dried eel with no seasoning once. We all carry shame. By the time you return to the palace, the horizon is glowing. You slip through the courtyard like a shadow, the robe once again wrapped tight. Your forbidden leg seems hidden away. You climb back onto the tatami mat and fold yourself into stillness. You don't sleep, not yet. Your body is awake in a strange way, thrilled and conflicted. Because yes, pants are easier, warmer, less drafty in all the strategic places. But also they make noise. They remind the body to move, to bend, to do. They belong to action, not meditation, to movement, not ceremony. Here, in this world of calm rituals and trailing silk, they feel foreign, and maybe that's the point. Later that day, you return to Lady Hoshi's workshop under the guise of rogue maintenance. She's brushing a bolt of crimson fabric. With such precision it looks like she's trying to whisper secrets into the weave. She pauses, eyes you sideways. You slept in something different. You try to play innocent. Did I? She doesn't respond, just says. Rebels always think the breeze won't tell on them. You look down. Somehow, despite your best efforts, your hem has betrayed you. A tiny crease near your ankle, unlike any robe's natural fall. Lady Hoshi returns to her fabric. Keep your pants, but wash them with ash water. They reek of urgency. You spend the day in a quiet daze, still feeling the thrill of it. People pass you in long robes, fanning themselves, sipping tea. No one knows. No one can guess what. You did not accept the monk, and maybe the breeze, and almost definitely Lady Hoshi. Still, you think about that statue's face, how still it was, how the pants didn't matter in that moment. Only the act of sitting, painting, being. You begin to wonder if this is why Shmu banned them in the first place. Not out of vanity, but because pants remind you to go. Robes remind you to stay. Historians still debate it. Was the ban a political gesture, a way to elevate court ritual? Or was it personal? A robe-wrapped emperor trying to preserve a kind of stillness he knew was vanishing. Maybe he wore pants once, too. Maybe we all do briefly, secretly, rebelliously, that evening. As the lanterns are lit and the cicadas begin their chorus, you watch the courtiers float by in shades of plum, jade, and pearl. Their movements ripple like water. The wind picks up, catching hems and tossing sleeves like sea foam. You, dressed once again in proper robes, feel the difference immediately. You're slower, softer, lighter, a bit less human, a bit more dream. And you think, maybe I needed to break the rule to understand it. Just once. The cicadas hum you into twilight as the garden lanterns throw soft halos on the gravel paths. You walk a little more slowly tonight. The memory of your forbidden pants making every brush of your robe against your legs feel deliberate, like your own body is reminding you to savor the silk, to understand why it matters. By now, you've spent over a week in the Nara court, and you're beginning to sense a rhythm beneath the rituals. A kind of internal clock that doesn't measure time in minutes or bells, but in sleeve flicks, tea sips, and long pauses. You're starting to appreciate the point of all this performance. It isn't about being seen, it's about slowing down enough to notice things, people, breezes, the tiny dip in the wood plank beneath your feet, the moth fluttering around a lantern as if it's whispering its final secrets to the flame dot its. Almost enough to make you forget how itchy your ankles were in those pants. Almost tonight. You're summoned not in secret, not in code, but officially to attend a moon-viewing gathering in the Imperial Gardens. This is not your average dinner party. You're warned in advance. No loud sleeves, no clashing colors, and for heaven's sake, don't talk about fishing. You're not told why. You arrive just as the moon clears the trees, full and pale as polished bone. There's a lake, perfectly still, a bridge that serves no purpose except to exist beautifully. Cushions laid out in a crescent for guests, like you're all tiny moons yourselves, orbiting the central pond. Everyone wears robes like moving shadows. The color palette is strictly ghostly elegance with a hint of marsh fog. You've never seen such refined restraint. No earrings, no clattering beads. Even the fans are quiet painted with clouds, folded just so, snapped open with absolute silence. And yet, as you take your place, you feel it again, that simmering rebellion underneath all this quiet. A courtier to your left hides a smile as she adjusts her collar, just an inch off protocol. A young man down the row eats two plums in a row when etiquette clearly calls for just one. A noblewoman lets her hair down half an inch too soon. These are not mistakes. These are flourishes, secret tattoos inside a room of invisible laws. You begin to understand that robes, like rules, are sometimes worn just to see how softly you can bend them, as moonlight ripples across the pond. The Emperor Shmoo appears not dramatically, not with drums or flutes, but simply like the breeze, arriving. He's wrapped in folds of pear-colored silk that shimmer like mist. His face is calm, unreadable. His presence is so quiet you almost miss it, like noticing the temperature shift. When a cloud passes overhead, and on his head, balanced delicately, is a crown that looks suspiciously like a folded fan. You bow, along with everyone else, slowly, with the timing of a falling leaf. He settles at the highest cushion and raises a small lacquer cup, not quite looking at the moon. "We wear these," he says without preamble, plucking at his robe, "not because they are beautiful, but because they delay us." A ripple of polite confusion follows. This is not in the script. They force slowness. He continues. They teach us to fold time. When I wore trousers once, yes, once I realized how quickly a body can forget it's a soul. You do not blink. He wore pants. You steal a glance at your fellow courtiers. Some are staring forward, faces blank. Others are actively pretending not to be stunned. One man quietly drops a rice ball into the pond in shock. But the Emperor says, "I miss the speed sometimes." He sips. The moonlight winks off the lacquer. No one dares speak. Then finally the flute player takes the hint and begins to play. The court exhales. After the gathering, you linger by the bridge, unsure if you're allowed to feel what you're feeling. The image of the Emperor, mysterious, moonlit, slightly pans-traumatized, burns gently in your memory. A robed figure glides up beside you. Did you hear it? Lady Hoshi murmurs. Here what? She lifts her fan to block the moonlight. His confession. You nod. He wore pants. She smiles faintly. A long time ago, during the construction of Todaiji, he visited the workers outside the capital. They say he dressed like them for a day. Why? To be faster, to feel what labor felt like. You both gaze at the water. A frog croaks somewhere, ruining the elegance in the best possible way. Historians still wonder, she says, if that single day is what made him ban trousers forever. As if he saw how easily a robe could be forgotten. As if he feared his own body's desire for simplicity. You think about your own night of pant-wearing rebellion, the freedom, the cold, the brush strokes beside the monk. You wonder if he feared. Not the pants, but what they made possible. Speed. Movement. Change. Dash later. As you return to your quarters, you pass a small alcove where a boy is scrubbing sandals with rice straw. He hums to himself, off-key and lovely. He looks up as you pass and nods not to you, but to your robe. Looks heavy, he says. You pause. Sometimes he taps the ground beside him. Mine's light. Want to try? You smile and shake your head. I already tried something. Even lighter. He shrugs, unfazed. They all get dirty. Heavy or light. Robe or pants. We all walk the same mud. You thank him and step back into your room feeling oddly leveled. Somewhere in this palace, robes are being pressed. Silkies being measured, bans are being enforced. And yet, at the heart of it all, you feel the pulse of something very human, fragile. Rai, Shomu's robes may slow him, but they don't silence the questions that keep humming beneath the seams. You lie back on your mat, arms above your head, like a surrendered ghost. Outside, the moon has slipped behind a cloud. The frogs are louder now. The breeze has warmed. You wonder what the emperor thinks about in the dark. Does he remember the way cotton clung to his knees when he walked among the workers? Does he regret banning pants? Or does he miss the version of himself who could still be surprised? Does he ever wish to run, to leap, to ride a horse without worrying how silk behaves in the wind? You drift off imagining him trying to mount a horse in court robes. It doesn't go well, but it is funny. You wake to the soft rustle of footsteps, someone sweeping the corridor with a broom made of willow twigs. The sound is gentle, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby in reverse. It doesn't wake you so much as nudge you gently out of a dream you no longer remember. You lie there for a moment, robe tangled at your feet, watching the dust motes spin in the beam of morning light. There's a cicada already warming up outside your shutter. Either it's very ambitious or very lost. You stretch, your joints pop softly, like old wood bending in the sun. You're not used to sleeping on a tatami mat, but your back is strangely grateful for it. There's a certain honesty to it, no padding, no fluff, just you and the floor. Like a truth you can't roll away from. Today, you're being sent on an excursion, which is a polite court word for journey you didn't volunteer for. You're told you'll be accompanying a minor official to a temple outside the city, one that the emperor personally commissioned during the early days of his reign. It's not an impressive boast, nor a particularly thrilling destination, but it is a chance to see the countryside and to wear travel robes, which, you're warned, must remain regulation length no matter how muddy the road. You briefly wonder if it would be rude to bring pants. You decide it would be fatal. The journey takes you beyond the cherry tree boundaries of Nara, out past rice fields where egrets pick delicately, between green shoots, and into a landscape that feels older than law. The path is little more than a curve of trampled grass between hills, and your sandals are quickly soaked with morning dew. Your companion, Lord Eritomo, is tall, quiet, and unshakably proper. His robe is patterned with abstract waves, and he walks like someone who has never tripped in his life. Why the temple, you ask? When you finally grow bold enough to speak, he does not look at you, because His Majesty cannot forget. Forget what? The hunger, the sickness, the fire. You blink. There was a fire. Eritomo finally glances your way, just enough to suggest a smirk. There's always a fire. The temple, when you reach it, is nothing like the grand halls of Nara. It's small, almost humble, built more from cedar than from showmanship. Its gate is weathered, and the bell tower leans slightly, like it's deep in thought. Inside, you're greeted, not by monks in formal robes, but by barefoot novices with sleeves rolled up to their elbows. They're patching a leak in the roof, hauling water from a stream, laughing too freely. You can tell this is not a place visited often by those in imperial silk. The head monk bows. His robes are plain, his eyes sharp. He invites you to sit for tea and then immediately forgets about you for the next 40 minutes. As he tends to a wounded crane in the courtyard, Eritomo doesn't seem to mind. He kneels in perfect stillness, the steam from his untouched tea spiraling upward like incense. You, on the other hand, shift and fidget, and at one point accidentally spill your sleeve into the teacup. You're starting to understand the appeal of shorter garments. Eventually, the monk joins you. His name, you learn, is Dune. He speaks with a gravelly voice and the kind of confidence that comes from not needing anything from you at all. He tells you the temple was built after a series of plagues ravaged the countryside in the early years of Shomu's rule. Entire villages were lost. The air grew so thick with smoke from funeral pyres that some days the sun barely showed its face. His Majesty, Dune says, commissioned this place not just to pray for the dead, but to hold space for what remains. You sip your tea more carefully this time. Do people still come? Not often, the monk replies. People forget how scared they were, and how kind they became, for a little while. Later, he takes you behind the main hall, past a row of stone lanterns, to a garden that isn't meant for display. There, between two plum trees, is a single statue, not of Buddha or Bodhisattva or any celestial being. It's a farmer, bent-backed, robe-ripped, feet bare. You notice immediately he's wearing pants. You point. Yes, Dune says, his voice dry. The scandal. Why? To remind us, he says, that reverence without reality is just vanity. You don't ask. More. The statue answers everything you need. On the way back, you and Eritomo walk in silence for a long time. Eventually, he says, do you know what the court fears most? You shake your head, simplicity, because it reveals what is necessary and what is not. You glance down at your robes, mud-spattered and twisted with travel. So why keep the rules? He smiles faintly, because even illusions have their uses, especially in fragile empires. Back in Nara, the palace feels colder than you remember, polished, overwashed. You nod to familiar faces who now seem further away. Later that night, you sit alone in the garden and write down a single line from the monk. Reverence without reality is just vanity. You fold it into the lining of your robe. You fall asleep that night not with thoughts of rules or robes or even emperors, but of the farmer carved in stone, quietly defying the palace from a hillside temple no one visits anymore. He does not kneel, he does not beg, but he remembers. A breeze moves through the paper walls, lifting a corner of your sleeve like a whispered invitation. Outside, the peach blossoms are just starting to fall, dotting the stone courtyard like gentle pink confetti. You've grown used to the lightness of robes now, the way they swish around your legs as if you're gliding instead of walking. You still miss the pocket space of pants, of course, but you're starting to understand the appeal of floating through life like an elegant silk. Jellyfish dot today. You're expected at a poetry contest, which, as it turns out, is neither quiet nor entirely literary. It's part performance, part flirtation, and part highly stylized political warfare, except instead of swords. Everyone carries folding fans and tightly wound metaphors dot the setting. Is an imperial villa surrounded by winding streams and footbridges that serve no practical purpose, but look very pretty when reflected in still water. The invitation said to wear your most seasonally appropriate robe. So you've wrapped yourself in a deep green hue trimmed with silver thread, hoping that says tasteful springtime renewal and not accidental tree. You arrive to find a procession of courtiers already in place robes in a spectrum of silks, fans flicking open like birds of prey, and hairstyles sculpted with more architectural thought than most modern cities. One woman glides past you in 12 layers. 12. You count. She leaves behind a light trail of plum blossom perfume and perhaps a faint smell of disdain. She's either royalty or just very committed to the bit. You take a seat near a willow tree, where soft harp music is drifting on the wind. Across the pond, the emperor is barely visible through a gauzy screen, seated on a raised platform beneath a painted canopy. He isn't participating in the contest. Of course, he's watching judging enjoying the show. You get the sense he's not above. A little drama. The rules are simple. Each participant draws a slip of paper with a seasonal phrase and must craft a poem using it, all while maintaining perfect poise, fan gestures, and vocal modulation. There's a lot of discreet eye contact, subtle sleeve, twitching, and occasional soft laughter from behind tasseled sleeves. Your phrase, moonlight on sleeves, you internally groan. The one about frogs would have been easier, or ducks dot as you wait your turn. You listen. One courtier delivers a love poem so layered with allegory that you suspect even she doesn't know who it's about anymore. Another veers into satire and nearly causes a tea-snorting incident among the elder advisors. One brave man uses his poem to complain about the rising cost of laundry services. It goes surprisingly well docked. And then there's Lady Tomo. She steps onto the stone platform in robes so pale they shimmer like mist. Her hair is braided with silver thread, and when she moves, it's like the wind bends around her out of respect. She raises her fan, gives the tiniest smile just enough to set a ripple of whispers through the crowd, and speaks. Sleeves touch moonlit stream, but I cannot tell which shines from the other side. The audience exhales collectively. Someone claps too early. You who have not clapped just stare. A few courtiers pretend to take notes. Others stare daggers laced with polite smiles. Lady Tomo bows, fan tilted just so, and returns to her seat. Without looking at anyone, your necks, you rise, robes snagging slightly on a stone. Not a strong start. You clear your throat. Open your fan, which you're pretty sure you're holding upside down, and deliver your own humble contribution. Moonlight on my sleeve. I spilled my tea. Again, please send new robes soon. There's a pause. Then, laughter. Not mocking, amused. Even the emperor chuckles softly, but undeniably. Lady Tomo raises one perfectly curved eyebrow, then offers a half nod of appreciation or pity. Hard to tell. Either way, you sit back down and hide behind your fan until your cheeks stop glowing. As the contest continues, you begin to notice something strange. The robes people wear are not just decoration, they're conversation. The fabric speaks before the mouth does. A hint of lavender in the lining suggests spring longing. Embroidered waves say my family trades by sea. A tiny plum blossom tucked into a collar says, I know you saw me at the festival. And yes, I saw you too. There's a whole language here, and you are functionally illiterate. A young courtier beside you leans over and whispers, she's wearing last year's pattern. Scandal. You glance toward the woman in question, who appears blissfully unaware or delightfully unbothered. Maybe scandal is the point. Another participant takes the stage and recites a love poem so overt it feels like watching someone emotionally undress. The object of the poem, the official seated across from him, adjusts his robe collar 3 times. In 5 seconds, which, in court language, may as well be a public marriage proposal. A breeze pauses again. Someone releases a handful of flower petals into the air, purely for aesthetic reasons. This whole thing is half ballet, half mind game. And every hem, every sleeve, every fold is a chess move. By late afternoon, the contest concludes. No formal winner is announced. This isn't about points. It's about performance, presence, prestige. You leave the garden villa with the sense that something significant happened. Even if you can't quite name it, Lady Tomo brushes past you near the exit. She says nothing, but leaves behind a folded fan with a cherry blossom painted on it, and a single word, unbuttoned. You're not sure if it's a compliment, an invitation, or a challenge. Probably yes. That evening, you return to your quarters and peel off your green robe with relief. There's flower petals stuck in the collar, and your feet are sore from pretending to be lighter than air. You sit by the window and think about how clothes in this world are more than garments. They're signals, shields, seduction. And the only thing more daring than following the fashion, breaking it. Maybe pants weren't banned just because they were foreign or unfashionable. Maybe they were banned because they didn't speak the way robes do. No whispering hems, no sleeves that flutter with nuance. To blunt, to legible. To real. You fall asleep with that fan beside you, and the soft sound of distant laughter rising over the city like smoke. You awake to the sound of rain tapping gently on the rice paper windows, a delicate percussion that fills the room with quiet energy. The air smells of wet earth and freshly crushed pine needles, making the small space feel alive and connected to the world outside. You stretch, feeling the slight chill of damp fabric clinging to your skin. Today is a rest day in the court's slow-moving calendar, which means less formal wear and more casual contemplation. You decide to wander through the palace grounds, which are now glossy with raindrops, each leaf and petal holding a tiny mirror reflecting the overcast sky. As you walk, you notice how the robes change when wet colors deepen, patterns blur, and the silk becomes heavier, clinging to the body like a secret. The layered fabrics you once thought cumbersome now feel like an embrace, a shield from the cool drizzle. You pause near a small koi pond, watching the fish ripple the surface with graceful flicks. One particularly bold koi swims close, its scales glinting like molten gold. You find yourself thinking about how the layers of silk on the courtiers are not unlike the scales of these fish, each overlapping one another to create strength and beauty in motion. You're soon joined by an elderly court official named Sadao, who has the kind of laugh that sounds like a dry creek bedrough, unexpected and oddly comforting. Rain changes everything, doesn't it? He says, his voice gravelly but warm. You nod. It reveals what's beneath the surface. In a way, he chuckles. Precisely. It washes away pretenses, makes the truth of fabric and flesh cling together. You ask him about the ban on pants, curious if he believes it still holds weight in these wet conditions. Sadao strokes his beard thoughtfully. Pants were banned because they threatened the poetry of the robe. But on days like this, I sometimes wonder if the real ban was against practicality. You smile, imagining a courtier slipping and sliding through the muddy gardens in flowing robes. Imagine. Sadao continues, trying to chase a runaway ox in silk. You both laugh, the sound mingling with the rain. As the afternoon drifts on, Sadao leads you to a secluded tea house where the floors are heated and the walls are lined with shelves of scrolls. The air smells faintly of incense and old paper. You settle on cushions beside a low table while Sadao pours steaming tea from a simple clay pot. He tells you stories of Emperor Shomu's travels, how, despite his strict rules, he often ventured incognito among commoners, curious about their lives and garments. On one such journey, Sadao says, the emperor wore patched robes, sat with farmers, and ate millet cakes under the stars. He wore no crown, no fan, and certainly no pants. You lean forward. What changed his mind, then? Sadao smiles wistfully. Perhaps he realized that clothes cannot hold a man, that no matter the robe or trousers, it is the heart beneath that shapes the world. You find yourself wondering, If Shomu's ban was less about control and more about longing, a desire to capture stillness in a world always moving forward, the rain slows to a whisper outside. You close your eyes, savoring the warmth of the tea and the gentle presence of your companion. The room feels suspended between moments, a quiet pause in the endless flow of court life. Before leaving, Sadao shares one last thought. Sometimes, the softest fabric carries the loudest truths. You tuck those words deep inside, feeling the weight of silk and meaning intertwined. Later, back in your quarters, you carefully unwrap your robe and lay it flat, fingers tracing the delicate embroidery. The wetness from earlier has settled into the fibers, making the colors richer and the fabric more pliable. You realize that robes, pants, and the laws around them are less about the clothing themselves and more about the stories they tell, the stories we choose to wear. You fold your robe slowly, each crease a deliberate act of respect and rebellion all at once. Outside, the rain has stopped. The world smells fresh and new, as if ready to begin again. You settle down, letting the softness of your robe envelop you like a whispered promise. Morning arrives with a soft saya pale light filtering through the shoji screens like spilled milk. The air feels crisp, hinting at the approaching summer. You notice the faint scent of jasmine drifting on a breeze that slips through the slightly open window. You prepare yourself for a day unlike any other. A visit to the bustling market district, where the unadorned and the extravagant collide in a dizzying dance of sound, color, and scent. As you step outside, the contrast is immediate. Gone are the slow, deliberate movements of court life. Instead, there's chatter, laughter, merchants, hawking their wares, and the clatter of wooden carts on cobblestones. The market smells like fresh fish, drying herbs, and roasted chestnuts. Your robe feels conspicuously formal here. A silk banner declaring your status, though you do your best to tuck your sleeves and keep a low profile. You wander between stalls where vendors sell everything from lacquered combs to paper fans, from medicinal herbs to rare spices imported from the southern seas. A stall selling dyed fabrics catches your eye. The colors here are vivid and unrestrained fiery reds, deep indigos, sunburst yellows. The seller, a cheerful woman with a face like a ripe persimmon, invites you to touch the fabrics. You run your fingers over the rough cotton and soft silks, feeling the stories woven into each thread. She tells you that common folk wear simpler robes, usually cotton or hemp, dyed in earth tones. The patterns are less about status and more about daily life fishing nets, rice paddies, mountain streams. You can't help but notice a small group of children chasing a loose chicken through the alleys, their laughter ringing like bells. One of them wears a patched robe, sleeves frayed and sleeves shorter than the norm. But his smile is radiant. A shadow passes over the crowded procession of palace guards escorting a noblewoman. Her robes are so layered and elaborate they seem to absorb the light around her. The crowd parts reverently. You catch the eye of the noblewoman for a brief moment. There's a flicker of recognition, or perhaps curiosity, before she looks away. You wonder what it must be like to live in a world where every glance is a question, every movement a statement. Near a food store, you meet an elderly man selling fermented plums. His face is lined with years and laughter. You barter with him for a small pouch and strike up a conversation. He tells you stories of festivals where robes become a living tapestry, each one a page in the history of the city. He laughs when you mention the emperor's pants ban, saying, "Pants are for running, yes, but running away from tradition, that's harder." You ask him if anyone secretly wears pants under their robes. He winks. In the night, who knows what shadows where? As the day fades, you sit on a low bench and watch the market settle into a quieter rhythm. Lanterns flicker on, casting a warm glow on the stone pots. The scents of grilled fish and sweet rice cakes mingle in the air. You realize that this world, vibrant and alive, exists in parallel to the serene court. It's messy and noisy and imperfect, but it's also where the heart of the city beats strongest. Your robe feels less like a shield now and more like a bridge between worlds, between moments. You fold your sleeves over your lap and breathe deeply, feeling the city's pulse echo through your fingertips. That night, as you lay on your tatami mat, you think about the market's energy, the unspoken lives woven into every thread and every step. You wonder how many people long to break free from the weight of their robes, just as you did with your pants. And you smile, knowing that whether in silk or cotton, in robes or pants, we all carry stories stitched into our skin. You awake to a gentle breeze, carrying with it the distant sounds of temple bells ringing a slow, sonorous call that seems to resonate with the rhythm of your own breath. Today, you're invited to witness a ceremony unlike any other, a ritual dedicated to the weaving of new imperial robes. You arrive at the workshop just as dawn breaks, painting the sky with shades of rose and gold. The air inside is thick with the scent of fresh silk, natural dyes, and the faint metallic tang of needles piercing fabric. Women and men work in quiet concentration, their fingers deftly folding, stitching, and embellishing. The atmosphere hums with a delicate tensional blend of reverence and anticipation. You watch as a master weaver carefully stretches a bolt of silk across a wooden frame, the threads gleaming like spun moonlight. One young apprentice catches your eye. She's barely older than a child, but moves with the grace of a seasoned artist. Her robes are simple, a muted indigo, but her eyes shine with quiet determination. She pauses her weaving and smiles softly, as if sharing a secret. You ask her if she knows the story behind the emperor's ban on pants. She nods, her fingers never stopping. They say it was to keep the court slow and graceful, to preserve a way of life slipping away. You smile. Do you think it worked? She shrugs. Maybe, but fabric can't hold a heart. As the morning stretches on, you learn about the dyeing process. Natural pigments are extracted from roots, leaves, and minerals. Indigo blue, derived from the woad plant, is particularly prized. Its deep hue can last for years, fading slowly like a whispered memory. You watch as a group dips silk into vats of indigo dye, the fabric turning from ghostly white to a rich, velvety blue. The apprentice explains that robes are more than clothing, they are a canvas for history, a way to carry stories forward through generations. She gestures to a pattern embroidered with cranes in flight. These symbolize longevity and good fortune. You wonder how many stories are hidden in the folds of your own robe. Later, the master weaver invites you to try your hand at stitching. You fumble at first, the needle prickling your fingers awkwardly. But as you settle into the rhythm, you begin to understand the patience and precision required. Each stitch is a tiny act of meditation, a deliberate slowing down. You realize the robes are not just about appearance, they're about being present, being patient, being part of something larger than yourself. Dash as the day fades. You help fold finished robes into stacks, each one a promise of ceremony, tradition, and silent rebellion. The apprentice whispers that some of the patterns are secretly designed to challenge the status. Tiny, almost invisible symbols woven into hems and collars. You smile, thinking back to the fan labeled unbuttoned. Perhaps rebellion is always just a stitch away. Walking back through the palace gardens, you feel the silk of your robe against your skin, heavier now with new meaning. You think about Emperor Shmu, his bands, his silks, his hidden pants, and wonder if he too understood the power of a single stitch to hold a story, a memory, a secret. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you fold your robe carefully, cherishing the weight of history and possibility resting in your hands. The early morning light filters through the wooden lattice windows in soft, geometric patterns. You find yourself drawn once more to the palace gardens, a place where the whispers of the past seem to gather like fallen petals beneath the cherry trees. Today's experience is quieter, a solitary walk meant to clear the mind and slow the breath. The garden is a maze of winding paths, moss-covered stones, and gentle streams that murmur secrets only the wind can carry. As you meander, you notice a small group of courtiers gathered near a pond, watching something with quiet fascination. Approaching, you see it's a koi fish, its scales shimmering gold and crimson, trapped briefly in a net that a gardener is carefully removing. The fish darts free, flicking its tail in a burst of energy before disappearing beneath the ripples. You think about how the koi's journey mirrors the delicate dance you've been part of, a struggle between restraint and freedom, between tradition and change. One of the courtiers turns to you, a kindly man named Kato, and remarks on the symbolism of the koi: perseverance, courage, and transformation. He shares a story of Emperor Shmu, who once commissioned a tapestry depicting a koi swimming upstream, representing the court's own resistance against the currents of time. You listen, imagining the emperor sitting before such a tapestry, perhaps longing to break free from the very traditions he sought to preserve. Later, Cato invites you to participate in a tea ceremony held beneath a blossoming plum tree. The ritual is slow and deliberate, each movement measured and meaningful. You notice how the robes, once cumbersome, now seem to flow with the ceremony, their folds accentuating the grace of each gesture. The tea's warmth spreads through you, calming the restless thoughts of the day. As you sip, Cato quietly mentions a secret practice among some courtiers, wearing a thin silk undergarment, resembling pants beneath their robes, hidden from sight. Not for rebellion, he says with a wink, but for comfort and warmth during cold mornings. You smile, recognizing the small acts of defiance that live beneath the surface of even the most rigid rules. As the ceremony ends, you feel a deep sense of connection not just to the people around you, but to the layers of history and humanity woven through the fabric of this place. You realize that clothing, like life, is a balance between appearance and essence, between the stories we show and the ones we keep close. That night, as you prepare to rest, you fold your robe gently, savoring the soft weight of silk and memory dot outside. The garden is bathed in moonlight, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and quiet possibility. You close your eyes, feeling the peaceful tension between tradition and change settle within you like a well-worn fabric. The dawn spills softly into your room like warm honey through a cracked window. Today, you're invited to witness an unusual gathering. In the imperial court, a debate on the meaning of tradition, progress, and, surprisingly, the place of pants. In Japanese society, you enter a hall lined with paper screens, their surfaces painted with misty landscapes and delicate plum blossoms. The air buzzes quietly with the murmur of courtiers, monks, and scholars, each cloaked in the flowing robes that define their station. At the center sits a small group of learned men and women, their faces calm but eyes sharp. The topic: whether Emperor Shomu's ban on pants was a wise preservation of culture or a rigid obstacle to necessary change. You settle into a corner, the soft rustle of your robe blending with the gentle creaking of wooden floorboards. The first speaker, a young scholar with spectacles perched precariously on his nose, argues passionately for tradition. Robes, he says, are more than clothing. They are a symbol of our history, our identity. Pants, with their practicality, threaten to erode the grace and poetry embedded in our culture. He gestures toward a tapestry depicting the court scene, where robes billow like clouds. An older monk counters gently, his voice steady as the slow drip of water. Yet, history is not a fixed thing, he replies. Change is woven into our very existence. The ban on pants may have once been necessary, but we must ask ourselves, does tradition serve us, or do we serve tradition? You note how his sleeves, less ornate than most, move with a deliberate simplicity. A lady in silks, embroidered with chrysanthemums, speaks next, her tone thoughtful. Perhaps the true question is balance, she suggests. How do we honor our past while embracing the future? How do we wear our history without being weighed down by it? Her fan opens and closes slowly, punctuating her words like a metronome. The debate unfolds like a dance, careful, measured, yet charged with undercurrents of passion and uncertainty. You watch as the participants navigate the fine line between respect and rebellion, tradition and innovation. The room feels alive with possibility, as if the very fabric of the robes worn by all present is woven from the threads of this conversation. Later, as the gathering disperses, you find yourself lingering near a window, gazing out at the gardens where lanterns begin to glow. You think about how the ban on pants was once a clear rule, but over time, its edges have softened and blurred much, like the calligraphy on ancient scrolls. You wonder what Emperor Shmu would think of this debate. Would he be comforted or disturbed? Would he see the robes as a shield or a cage? As twilight deepens, You feel a profound sense of the delicate balance that defines all human customs, the interplay between the weight of history and the lightness of change. You fold your robe with reverence, knowing that each crease is part of that ongoing story. Outside, the night settles softly, carrying the murmurs of countless voices past and present woven together like the finest silk. The morning greets you with a gentle warmth that seems to melt away the lingering chill of the night. The palace is quieter now, as if holding its breath, ready for a moment of reflection. Today is the day you depart from the imperial court. But before you leave, there is one final experience to savor: a private stroll through the sacred cedar grove that borders the palace grounds. You step beneath towering trees, their branches whispering ancient secrets in the soft breeze. The air is cool and fragrant with pine resin, a balm to your senses after weeks of silk and ceremony. The sunlight filters through the canopy in dappled patterns, like a delicate lace draped across the earth. As you walk, you feel the weight of your robe differently, less a symbol of status, more a companion on this quiet journey. You come upon a small clearing where a solitary stone lantern stands, worn by time and weather, yet steadfast. Nearby, a thin stream trickles over smooth rocks, singing a song older than the empire itself. You pause to listen, imagining the countless footsteps that have crossed this path: emperors, monks, rebels, and dreamers alike, each carrying their own stories wrapped in fabric. The grove feels like a bridge between worlds, a place where history and nature converge. You remember the tales of Emperor Shmu, his vision of a unified land, his ban on pants, and his struggle to balance tradition with change. You think about the delicate robes, the whispered rebellions, and the silent questions that have accompanied you on this journey. And you realize that, like the grove, these stories are living things, growing, shifting, rooted yet reaching toward the light. As you prepare to leave, you fold your robe one last time, careful and deliberate. Each crease carries the weight of memory, the softness of silk, and the promise of stories yet to be told. You look back once more at the cedar trees, their needles shimmering in the afternoon sun. You feel a quiet gratitude for the journey, the sights, the sounds, the silk, and yes, even the pants that never quite fit. As you step away, the breeze picks up, carrying with it a single petal from a nearby cherry blossom. It floats gently down, landing softly on your sleeve. You smile, knowing that some stories, like petals, are meant to drift and settle where they will. And with that, you walk forward into the unfolding future, wrapped in the past and moving with the grace of a robe in the wind. Now, as you lie back, feeling the gentle rise and fall of your chest, allow your mind to soften. The sounds around you fade into a quiet hum, the steady rhythm of your breath, the distant call of night creatures, the rustle of silk against skin. Imagine yourself wrapped in the softest fabric, warm and weightless, drifting slowly like a leaf. On a calm stream, the cedar grove's scent lingers faintly, mingling with the cool night air, carrying peace and stillness deep into your body. Each breath you take slows the world further, a soothing wave washing over you, carrying away the day's worries and thoughts. Feel the steady pulse beneath your skin, The quiet strength in your muscles as they relax fully into the night. Don't know that you are safe here, held by history's gentle hand, connected to countless others who have walked this path before. Let your thoughts dissolve like mist and sink deeper into calmness. Rest now. The journey continues in your dreams, soft, slow, and endless.